All right, so one of the first things we want to make, this is a good way to start, is to put together a little script that adds blips to the map. It should be a fairly simple task to accomplish, and it'll help us learn a variety of things together. Start off is building a script that creates blips around the map. So the first thing you want to do is you want to create a folder. You can call this folder anything you want. I'm going to call it Sin Blips. If we open this, it's going to be empty. We're going to create a new file, and we're going to call it FX Manifest. And this is important, the TXT to a LUA, and then you click, right? So now we have an FX Manifest. So now, what do we do here? There's a couple of things. They're like boilerplates. You always gotta have them if you're writing a script. So let's go to my bank script. And let's look at the FX manifest there. Right? If we drag this to the side like this, we can have them side by side and compare. So these things will always be copied over. You don't have to write them. You can just copy them from any other script. Then we're going to take these two and we're going to empty them, right? They're just there for us in case we need them. There's one more thing I like to do, which I've done on some of my scripts. For example, the weapons script. And I've learned this trick from another developer, which is a shared. And the shared is files that work for both server-side and client-side. So you don't have to keep writing them again and again. Right, so now we have our FX manifest, and if we open it, right, it's empty, it has nothing, right? We're gonna start off by creating a config, right? A config is simple, and I'll explain it as we go, right? So let's write config and then call it LUA. The idea of a config is to create a place where most of your data that you're going to be changing is. So when the file is transferred for other users, it's easy for them to change, for example, prices or the looks of things without having to go and change the core parts of the script. And this accomplishes a lot of accessibility, I feel. So a config is an important part of a script. So what is a config? A config is an array that has a bunch of values in it. So I like to do it is I type config is equals to an empty table, right? And now we can populate that table with different kinds of information. So start by making a blips table. So we're gonna say config.blips is equals to another table that's empty. Now, what does this mean? That inside the config table, there is another table called blips. If I want to access what's inside this table, I can access it by doing this. Things we want to have in a blip table is the ability to have multiple blips within the table. This will prove useful later, where we don't have to repeat ourselves, and I'll explain it as we go. So we're going to create another table inside of the blips table with a comma at the end. So every blip needs to have a couple of things, right? Those things are like classes, you know? Every blip has to have a name. Every blip has to have like a hash code for the way it looks. Blips could have colors. Blips could be scaled differently. There's so many different kinds of natives that you could use for blips, and you can easily find them by googling redm natives and then going here and just typing blip, and you can see there's so many different things that we could do with blips. So the idea is when you're creating a blip, there's a set of values that are repetitive. So instead of writing the same natives over and over and over again, we put it all in a table and we loop the table over the natives, changing the variables depending on the kind of blip that we want to make. So let's say the name is something that we want. We're going to call this, for example, blip1. Okay. Then let's say the hash is something that we're going to want. And of course, we should never forget the comma. And then another comma, because this is not the end of that particular part. And there is a website that we can use to get different blip types. I'll share it with you guys. This is what I use. You can definitely use, you can always use the discoveries to find different blips. But I like this one because it displays all of them in a way that's easy to see. And this is the website, right? I'll include this in the file, and I'll include a download link to the file in the description of the video, marks, because it is a hash. So let's say we're gonna use the cowboy hash, right? So we're just gonna copy this hash, make sure we include the negative sign because it has to match, right? And then let's say we're gonna scale. So let's say the scale for this is going to be 0.5, for example. Now we've created a basic blip structure. We're missing one thing here, which is where is the blip going to be located? And to get where the blip is going to be located, we have to go to the game. So once you're in the game, it's raining, it's nighttime. I've included the script in the pre-made server, which is if you do this command, chords, it'll show you the coordinates of where you are. So once you decide where you want to put the blip, let's say we're going to put the blip here, you can take a screenshot or write down the coordinates as they appear in green. You want the X, the Y, and the Z. I like to do it is I like to type chords is equals to, and then I open a table and I say X is equals to, and you got to be very careful because those are not integers. So you got to make sure you include the dot number at the end. Otherwise, the script won't be able to read them properly. And then 121.01. Okay. So now we have a basic structure for a blip. All right. This is a blip that has a cowboy hash that is 0.5 in scale that spawns or shows up on the map at these specific coordinates. What we're going to do now is we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call this file client.lua. And I've brought over some natives that we're going to use, and I'll explain where we find those natives and all of that. Those are just for my reference as I make the video, so I don't have to keep jumping between pages. Right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a thread. So we're going to type citizen dot thread, create thread, and this is a thread. What does this do? As soon as the client loads the script, this fires up. Now we want to put a little bit of time before the client starts this task. So we're going to do a citizen wait, and this is time in milliseconds. So let's say wait 5 seconds, and after waiting 5 seconds from the time that the script started, start the task. So what is the task? The task is going to be look inside the config file for the blips table and loop that table for each value in it, applying the natives that I asked you to apply while manipulating and changing the variables as per each blip entry within the blip table. Meaning, if we have multiple of these, we're gonna create a loop that accomplishes the natives for the first entry, and then the same natives for the second entry, and then the same natives for the third entry, while changing the different variables for each time it does the loop. For keys and values in pairs do end. This is a basic loop, right? What do we put inside these brackets? We put the name of the table, and for us, it's this. So we just type config.blips do. So now, what does this mean? These are keys. 1 key, 2 key, 2 keys, 3 keys. So 1, 2, 3. And the value was within the table. So we could do something like print v.name. What we're doing is we're telling it, as soon as the script fires up, loop through the config and print on my console the value at the key name within Blips. And this is a good time for me to teach you about printing and how you can use printing to troubleshoot. I think personally printing is one of the most important skills you can learn when you're developing or when you're writing script, because it can help you find, pinpoint, and identify different, it can help you find your problems and identify where your script stops working. So printing is something we're going to be looking at as well while we're creating this script. So we're going to do that here soon. First, what we need to do is we need to take what we created and put it in the server. So our FX manifest for now is still empty. We have no server script, no server-side script, so this will remain empty. You can remove it altogether, but for now, I'm going to keep it. We might do something with the server side. You never know. So we're going to keep it. So for the shirt, we're going to say it's config.lua, and then we're going to put a comma. Even though we're not going to do anything after the comma, we might do something after the comma later. For now, I want to keep the comma so that in case I forget and I try to add another file, it's there. And then I'm going to do the same thing here in the client section, and I'm going to say client. So now that we have our FX manifest pointing the files that we're going to be running, what we can do is we can grab the file off our desktop, cut it, and put it inside our server in the resources. Once we're in game, what we can do is refresh to make sure we have the new file found, and we can do ensure syn blips, and you'll see that after 5 seconds it'll print. I hope you see blip 1, blip 1, blip 1. What we have effectively done is we've looped through for each key of blips, and then we printed the name of each blip. So if we change the name of this blip to 2 and the name of this blip to 3, and we save script again, this time it'll print after 5 seconds blip 1, blip 2, blip 3. Right, so it did so. And we can tell it to print something else. We can tell it to print the v.scale, for example. And then now it's going to print the name and the scale. So if we go to the config, we can change the scale up so we can get different prints. We're going to get blip 1, 0.5, blip 2, 1.5, blip 3, 2.5. Right, as so. Printing will allow you to pinpoint where does the error occur. So I could do stuff like print, and I can put in quotation test. And what this will do is it'll print the word test So how does that help me? It helps me to know that it actually has values in config because it's going to print test each time it loops. So this is the kind of mentality you need to have when you're coding this kind of thing. You need to put prints as you go, and if you get stuck somewhere, a function or a thread, you need to put prints from the end, the result that you're expecting, up to the beginning of the thread, and then run the script and see where do your prints stop. You can put test1 at the beginning of the thread. For example, right here, I could put test print test1, and then after 5 seconds, I could do print test2, and then during the loop, I could do print test3, right? And then after the loop, I could do print test4. So if the script starts and it prints test1, it means the thread actually started. If it prints test2, it means after waiting 5 seconds, the script is still there, it's still alive. If it prints test3, it means the loop, the table that we're looping actually has values in it. Because if it didn't have values, it would have nothing to loop, and test3 wouldn't print. And I can show you this now. If it prints test4, it means the loop had successfully gone through all its iterations and finished. And test4 is the ending. So now we'll take a look at printing test3. It's going to print 3 times because we have 3 values in the config blips, and then we're going to comment out what's inside the config blips, and we're going to see that it's not going to print test3 because there is no values to loop over, and that's very important, right? So we're going to go into the game now, and we're going to look at the console, and we're going to see it print. We're going to see it print test1, test2, test3 3 times, and then test4. So as soon as we restart the script, it prints test1. It waits 5 seconds, and then it prints test2, and then it starts looping. Test3 the first time, test3 the second time, test3 the fourth time, and then test4, showing that the function had concluded. So now, if we go back to our script and we go to our config and we delete or comment out our values within the blip table, and we go back to the game and we restart the script, we'll see that it's going to print test1, test2. It's not going to print test3. It's going to print test4. Right, so test1, and then 2 and 4. You see that? So it didn't print any test3s because we don't have any values in the config. So if I was troubleshooting and I was like, why isn't something happening that I want to happen within the loop? Putting that print and seeing it not come back would mean that I probably made a mistake in the config table, or in the blips table, or somewhere that has to do with the table, because the table has no values. The natives to create a blip usually are the same exact natives. You always use the same natives, right? For the sake of demonstration, since we're going to be actually showing the blips on our minimap, we're going to change some of these values so that it doesn't stack 3 blips on top of each other and makes it hard for us to see them, right? So we're gonna do this, right? We just changed the coordinates a little bit, right? And then we're gonna go here, and those are the same table, the same natives you're always going to use. And I think, you know, those have been written a long time ago, before some of these natives were named. So we don't have to do stuff like this anymore. What we can do is we can just do this, right? We could just do right here, like that, create blips, and then, right, so this, we could do something like v.hash, right? Because it says here that this uses blip hash, and we've set the blip hash right here. So we do v.hash and then v.hash, we're gonna say chords dot x, and I'll explain this as well, right? Chords dot y, chords dot z, because we have a table within a table called chords, and within this table we have x, y, and z. Oh, we forgot z. That would have been a major problem. So it's good that we caught it and we can implement it. Right, so now we have, each table has an x, y, and z, and we're telling it, at v, look for the key chords, and at the key chords, look for the value at the key x. And the same thing for the value at the key y, and the same thing for the value at the key z. Right, this now is a blip. As soon as this native runs, a blip is created with an identifier, an ID, okay? When we say blip is equals to this, it means now that whenever we reference the word blip within this thread, because it's local, within this thread, whenever we reference the word blip, we are manipulating the blip that we created specifically here, right? So every time you create a blip or an entity, it has an ID. If you want to manipulate that blip or entity, you have to call for that ID and apply different natives to it. And the way we do that, if we had done this, it would still create the blip, but we have no reference to it, so we are incapable of manipulating it. And I can show this. Right, so we have no way of manipulating it. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to manipulate the blip. Right, a quick stop here to learn about localized variables. Okay, if outside over here I say a local is blip and it's equals to nil, and doing this is the same as doing local blip. I'm declaring the word blip as a word that can be used in any thread anywhere within the document. And if I say just blip is equals to nil, I'm declaring blip as a word or a variable that can be changed within this script, within this file, but still be used within other files that are client related. So this is how the config works. We're declaring it as a config that isn't local to this file, and at the fx manifest we're saying this is a shared file, meaning all files within the script can access the word config and what's in it, the variable config and what it contains. So if I declare blip out here, I wouldn't have to say it's local over here. I could continue to manipulate it, and then I could have another thread. So for example, what I can do is I can have two threads, and this is, you don't do this, right? But this is just to explain, where we create the blip on the first thread, and then we manipulate it on the second thread. And the only reason we can do that is because we have declared blip as a global variable for the whole file by doing this. And this can become problematic, and it can be useful. It depends on what you're trying to do. These little tricks can help you accomplish specific tasks depending on what you're trying to do. So if we could do this because we said that blip is over here. So now how does the logic work, right? The script starts, it says, okay, there is a variable called blip. For now, this variable has no value, it's nil. The first thread starts. After 5 seconds, it loops. It creates information at the blip add for chords, right? And then it assigns the ID that gets created by this native to this variable. The first time it loops. It loops again. It replaces the value that we've assigned the first time and adds another value, which is the second blip that we created. It loops again for the third time because we have 3 keys, and it replaces the value again for the last value. So then when we go to the next part, you're looping again, but you're only manipulating the third blip that you created, because the first 2 blips that you created have been gone in the ether. And that's why we do all of this within one blip, one thread, and we manipulate each time we create the blip, because each time it gets created, it's different. Now, what is this native? I wanna know what this native is. So I can go here and I can say set name from player strings. So what this means is this is where the name of the blip is assigned. And what we can do is we can go here and we can say v.name, right? If we restart the script blips, it's gonna wait 5 seconds, and then it should populate our map with different blips, right? It says global not found, add blips records, meaning we have to use the unnamed variable, which isn't a big deal, right? It's not a big deal. All this means is that instead of doing add blip for chords, we have to do this. Right? Yeah. Right. So this is the same as this, and I'll explain it, right? So since this is redm, some natives aren't named. So if you go here, and we go here, you'll see that it has a hash. If we copy this hash and we paste it here, then we're basically calling the same native. And we wait a couple seconds, 5 seconds to be exact. And we should have our blips on our map. Why don't we have them? Right, so now we're seeing that we have a problem. So we can use the same method to troubleshoot it. Right, I know what the problem is, but I'm gonna follow this exercise to help you guys along, right? So if we look here, we're looking at vhash. If I print vhash, it's gonna print, right? And then I can print each one of the variables that I'm using to see if they print. If they come back as nil, it means I made a mistake on that specific variable. So now we could do y. And obviously, the first time you do the print method, you're gonna be lost, but the more you do it and the more you exercise, eventually you'll be able to identify your problems a lot easier. So blip sprite, we're printing this. And we're printing the name. Now, we know our loop loops. We've tested it, we've seen it loop, we've seen it do the test three times, so we know it loops. So the problem, why the blips aren't appearing, is because one of those is incorrect. So we're gonna find out which one by printing. So we pop our F8 and we ensure the script again, and we wait 5 seconds and we look at the prints. If one of them says nil, it means that one is the problem, right? So first one is the hash, second one is X, Y, Z, nil. There we go. So our problem is our second to last print. If we go back, and you can name these prints to make them easier for you to identify by doing something like this, right? Name. And then it would print the name, and then with a space, it'll write name, so you know that this is name. And then you could do something like this. Blip sprite, so you know that this print is blip sprite. So anyways, we know our problem is blip sprite. Why is this a problem? Because we do not have a key here that says blip sprite. Instead, we have a key that says hash. So instead of saying blip sprite, we need to be saying hash. And you might ask me, this is kind of redundant. We already declared the hash here, and I agree with you. So let's test not including the set blip sprite and see if it shows up in game and if it creates different blips. And we restart the script. I think what's going to happen here is not going to create the blips because it needs that native set blip sprite. I think so. Not 100% sure, but we'll see. Right. So it didn't set, meaning we do need that set blip sprite bit and declare the hash. And by the way, this 1.5, we could say scale because we have that already here declared, right? We want them to be different sizes, right? So now we go back to the game. They should work. If they don't, you know, just another day at the barn. No need to be scared or freak out. You just need to slowly look at other scripts and see how they do it. Come back to your script and figure out how you should do it. You know, most of these things are discovered. They've been done. They're not groundbreaking. It's usually when you're trying to do something that no one else did before, that's when you have problems. So if we look at our map, yeah, no blips. So we have an issue. Right, so the only thing I could think about was that before we had vhash over here, when most scripts are using this. So meaning I made a mistake in the context. This is what needs to be here. I'm not 100% sure about what exactly blip hash. I'm not sure why it didn't work to use this, but just doing this works, so I'm gonna do this. So now we create the blip, we set its sprite, and we set its scale, and then let me make sure scale, perfect, and then we have the blip name. So now if we go to the game, we'll see that I already restarted the script and the blips are created. Blip 2, blip 1, blip 3. Now, there's a problem here, right? And the problem happens when you restart the script again, right? What happens when you restart the script again? Oh, ragdoll, right? We have two blips on top of each other. You might not be able to see them, but they're there. And hopefully, I can show them. Let's go to BLI. Here, you see 1 out of 2. There's 2 blips on top of each other here. Why? Because when we are restarting the script, we're not deleting the blip. We're keeping it there. We're keeping it there, and then we're creating another one on top of it, which can become problematic. You want to create a script that manages blips, changes them. The blip isn't always there. The blip is only there when you need it to be there. Otherwise, it's not. So this is something that you can do. After the blip is created, you can do something table.insert. And then what this does, this is a LUA thing, right? And what this does is we can have a global table called blips, and we can say that this blip is an empty table. And then here, table insert, and we can say add blip, and then comma 2 blips. So now this table is going to be populated by the blip numbers. And we can demonstrate this by looping for that table and printing its content. So we can do for kv in pairs blips do, and then we're going to say print v. And the reason we're doing print v is because this table is not like this table. This blips table is going to be something like this. Blips is equals to a table with, they're usually numbers, with hashes on top of each other like this. So each one of those is considered a value, and its position within the table is the key. So this is key 1, key 2, key 3, and each one is its own value. Right, so when we want to loop for them, we can loop for v directly. If we want to create tables inside, we could create tables, and we can write information inside those tables, like blip is equals to blip, and then we can say name is equals to name. Well, it wouldn't be name, it would be v dot name, right? And then here, if we did it like this, then here we print for v dot name, and then we print for v dot blip. Because if we do it like this, it means that each blip is not a number, but more of a table, obviously with the commas, right? So that's just, if you needed to store more information about the blip while you're creating it. But for the purposes of what we're trying to do, we really don't need all of that. All we need to do is just have the blip right away, like this, and then just print for v. So we're gonna go over to the game, and we're gonna take a look. We print, and then it waits 5 seconds. Problem. Table insert, table expected, got a number. So I flipped it around, and that's a mistake on my end. It's supposed to be blips, so we add 2 blips, the value blip, right? Because I know it's confusing. So we can call this blips table. And then here we can say add table insert, so add the table blips table, add the blip that we created. Then here we loop for blips table. And then we can go back to the game. Oh, and one thing, these are actually very helpful because these tell you where the problem is. So this tells you at LUA line 17, you had a bad argument. You're using the method insert, which expects a table but got a number. Right, so if we ensure it, it's gonna wait 5 seconds. Obviously, we're still stacking on top of these, but it's gonna print the values of these blips. So if we look, I'll show you that we're still stacking them. And this can become problematic, especially if you're running, you see, 3, because we restarted 3 times. We have 3 blips on top of each other. Right, so we did see it print, so now we know that the table that we created is populated. So how do we remove those blips that get created when the script starts, when the script stops? Meaning, if the script gets restarted, I want those tables that were created by the script to be removed. I want those blips that were created by the script to be removed. Right, so for this, we're going to use a method called onResourceStop. So we're going to take a look at that. So this is a CFX event, meaning when this specific script has been told to stop, do the following. What are we doing, right? We're saying loop, the same loop, but this time call a function, call a native called remove blip. And then we have to give it the ID of the blip, which is this, which we added to this table as v, and we're printing. And now, for demonstration purposes, we could do something like this, right? Just to help us see the new blips compared to the old blips. And then we can grab like a different one, let's say the bad cowboy one instead of this one, to help us just identify the new ones, because the old ones are going to be there. You're not going to be able to get them off your screen until you log out and log back in, and they're gone. Because now you have no way of deleting them. You've created them with no way of deleting them. But with this new function that we created, which is onResourceStop, those created blips will be deleted when the script restarts. So if you happen to do a live restart of the script, no double blips. Right, so let's take a look at how that works in game. Right, so we're gonna restart the script. And you'll see it create the new blips right next to each other because we didn't give them much space. But you see, blip 2, blip 3, blip 1. All right, and you can see them on the map right here. Now look at the map. I'm not gonna cover them. Look at the map when I restart the script. You'll see them disappear and then come back when the script starts again. Meaning those are blips that actually go away and come back and we can manipulate them. Now, we use the resource stop function to delete them, but this is only a template. You can obviously use the same method here doing other things, such as like if a player presses a button, remove the blips, and if they press another button, bring them back. And this can be used for so many things, for a lot of the work that you do. I'm gonna wrap it up for now because I think I've explained a lot of concepts. I'd like for you guys to take time to check those concepts out and see if you can implement them yourself. We'll be doing a lot more of these, I hope. If enough people like it, you know, and give it attention, I'll definitely be making more. I want to show you guys so many things. I want to show you guys prompts, draw texts, you know, distance checks, loops, like thread loops, and how to optimize them, and so much more. Like, there's so much I'd love to teach you guys, but let's see. If you enjoyed the video, like it, subscribe, and leave me a comment with any questions you have regarding what we did today or what you'd like me to cover in the future. I appreciate it, and have a good day.